Hey everybody, it's Terry. Welcome back to my workshop. Today we are going to be talking about this model. This is the new F-14 Tomcat from E-flite. And as you look at this model in my hands, you may be thinking, I've seen the advertisement for E-flite's F-14, but I don't remember it having red on the wings. Well, you are exactly right. This F-14 has red wings because I gave it red wings. And I'll explain exactly why I did that in a few minutes. But first, let's go over a few of the basic features of this model. When you are talking about RC models of the F-14, the very first question that everybody asks is, does it have swing wings like the full-scale F-14? Well, in this case, the answer is yes. You can choose from 3 different wing sweep positions using a 3-position switch on your transmitter, and you can make those changes while the airplane is in flight. Now, this is the fully forward position, and in this configuration, the wingspan is right at 30 inches. There's also a middle position, or you can choose to have the wings fully swept. Now, when the wings are tucked back like this, the wingspan reduces all the way down to just under 18 inches. The basic airframe of this F-14 is made out of molded foam components. There are also a few plastic pieces, either for strength or for scale appearance. When you take this airplane out of the box, there is essentially no assembly for you to do. All you have to do is set up a profile in your Spectrum transmitter and then bind it to the 2.4 gigahertz receiver that is included and installed in the airplane. And this is probably a good time to talk about all of the electronics that are included. So if we remove this hatch on the bottom of the model, it reveals a few different components. First of all, there's the flight controller, and it contains a few key ingredients in this airplane. First of all, it has the receiver that I just talked about. There are also the gyros that enable it to have AS3X and safe stabilization. Additionally, there are speed controls which are connected to the brushless motors that drive the 40mm diameter ducted fan units that propel this thing through the sky. If you look up here, there are 2 linear servos. These servos actuate the horizontal stabilizers. The horizontal stabilizers work in unison as tailerons to provide both pitch and roll control of the model. And these are the only 2 control surfaces that this F-14 has or needs. It's also worth mentioning that this model includes landing gear. This landing gear is not retractable, but it is removable. And when you have the landing gear in place, there is an additional servo in the nose that provides nose wheel steering control. I've been flying the F-14 with my IX-12, and other than a Spectrum-compatible transmitter, the only item that you'll have to provide is a 4-cell 2200 mAh lithium polymer battery. And E-flite recommends this smart battery from Spectrum that has a 30C discharge rate. The battery tray is located under the canopy, and this whole area is one hatch that is held in place with a lip in the back and a magnet in the front. With the hatch removed, you can see the hook and loop tape that holds the battery in place. There isn't much extra room to alter the mounting position of the battery, but that's okay. My F-14 balanced exactly where it was supposed to with no trouble at all. Now let's talk about the fun part, flying the F-14. If you have access to a paved or a geotex runway, then you can use the included landing gear for rolling takeoffs and landings. But if, like me, your club only has a grass runway, then you will need to hand launch the F-14. Don't let that concern you. This model is exceptionally easy to hand launch. I mentioned a minute ago that the F-14 includes safe stabilization. I know that some of you out there never use safe, but let this be the exception. With safe enabled, all you have to do is give the F-14 full throttle and then a reasonably firm toss into the wind. Safe will take care of the rest. And then once the airplane is underway, you can choose to either keep safe enabled or turn it off. The only trouble that you might have is having hands that are large enough to grip both sides of the nacelles for a reasonable toss. The very first thing that you will notice when flying the F-14 is that despite its small size, this is not a park flyer. It needs some room. And really, there are 2 reasons for that. First of all, it's zippy. It likes to move. And isn't that why we fly ducted fan models to begin with? The other thing is that even when the controls are in high rates, the control response is smooth rather than snappy. So you will find yourself making large control inputs just to get around the pattern. Now, that is not to say that the F-14 is not aerobatic. It is, but it performs large, smooth aerobatics rather than up-close, tight aerobatics. Interestingly, the maneuverability of this model is influenced by the wing position, just like the full-scale F-14. It is most maneuverable when the wings are fully forward, and then the maneuverability softens as the wings are swept. So I find that I spend most of my flight time with the wings fully forward. Now, with that said, there is nothing cooler than a full throttle, low pass with the wings fully swept. And if you can't appreciate that, then you don't even deserve an F-14. The recommended battery will provide flight times of about 3.5 minutes for the F-14. I know that probably doesn't sound very long to some of you, but I can guarantee that that will be a very exciting and fun-filled 210 seconds. Now let's talk about the red on my model. Out of the box, the E-flite F-14 is painted much like many of the F-14s that served in the US Navy. That is, it's all over gray with a few different colorful accents. And those accents on the model are either paint or stickers. The US Navy painted their F-14s that way to make them more difficult to see. And while that may have been a big help for the people sitting in the cockpit of a full-scale F-14, it is not very helpful to us RC pilots standing on the ground. And I sometimes had trouble keeping track of this small, fast model in flight. That's why I painted on these red accents, and it has greatly improved the in-flight orientation of the model. While this may not be an accurate scale trim scheme, it is a more visible trim scheme, and you may want to consider a similar modification on your own F-14. This concludes my review of the E-flite F-14. Keep watching for a little bit more flight footage. Also, be sure to check out the written article in Model Aviation Magazine. Thanks for watching.